She was insulted, humiliated, and all but thrown out of the luxury Jade store, just because she looked too plain to afford anything inside. The staff mocked her, the manager told her to leave, and a group of rich socialites laughed in her face. But then, the glass doors opened, and in walked her husband. Not just any man, the billionaire owner of the entire Jade chain, with power in his stride and fire in his eyes. A young woman with a delicate face and understated beauty stepped off the busy escalator and into the most luxurious shopping mall in Manhattan, a glittering landmark that boasted designer boutiques, marble floors, and a clientele that typically roamed the corridors with black cards in hand. Her name was Nina. She wore a simple light blue blouse, slightly faded jeans, and flats that had seen better days. If she hadn't possessed such a natural radiance, most people would have strolled past her without even noticing. Yet, Nina was here with a purpose. Grandpa Gray's 70th birthday was approaching, and she wanted to find a meaningful present. He'd raised her like a father, teaching her kindness and humility, always insisting that sincerity mattered more than flashy gestures. Nina believed that wholeheartedly, and that belief led her to a high-end jade and gemstone boutique rumored to have the best selection in town. She stepped into Jade Pavilion, inhaling the faint scent of incense that permeated the store. The place shimmered with glass displays, each filled with elaborate jade sculptures, bracelets, necklaces, and pendants. Framed calligraphy and minimalist decorations added an air of sophistication. Right away, Nina felt out of place. Her outfit looked out of step with the grand surroundings and the sales staff, who wore formal attire and name tags edged in gold. Still, she reminded herself that Grandpa Gray loved Jade. Even a modest piece would bring him joy, so long as it came from her heart. "Hello, may I help you?" The greeting came from a man in a fitted vest, who bustled up to her, offering a rather patronizing smile. His name tag read, Carl Morgan, store manager. Nina blinked and returned his smile as politely as possible. "I'm looking for a jade bracelet, maybe something carved into prayer beads, if you have it. My grandfather's birthday is coming up." She tried to keep her tone light and friendly, but she could already sense his gaze flicking over her clothes, his eyebrows rising in a subtle show of doubt. "Prayer beads carved from jade, you say?" Carl said, pressing his palms together as if in deep thought. Yes, of course, we have something along those lines." He waved her forward. "Please, step this way." Nina followed him past rows of display cases, gleaming under bright white lights. She caught glimpses of elaborate Buddha statuettes, jade pendants shaped like lotus flowers, and intricate carvings that must have cost a fortune. They stopped at a glass case near the store's center. Carl produced a ring of keys, fumbling theatrically before locating the right one. With a flourish, he unlocked the case and lifted out 3 different sets of jade prayer beads. "These are brand new," Carl said with a grin. "Just arrived from overseas. Very high-end. The craftsmanship is exquisite. Perfect for a grand occasion. See how translucent the jade is? And these subtle color variations?" He rattled off a list of impressive-sounding features, words like imperial quality and ice jade. Terms Nina didn't fully understand. Then he dropped the bomb. "They're only $100,000 or $200,000 apiece." Nina felt her stomach jolt. "1 or 200,000? She echoed in disbelief, her cheeks coloring. She'd known Jade Pavilion was pricey, but she hadn't expected that kind of price range. Carl clicked his tongue sympathetically. "I see. Maybe something more accessible. Let's take a look at another shelf." He carefully returned the prayer beads, then locked the display. His warm demeanor receded a fraction. He led her to another area at the store's side, flipping open a different glass case. "These pieces use slightly less perfect jade. Still nice, of course. We normally sell them in the 70 to 80,000 range, but I can give you a special discount. Let's say 60,000 if you pick one now." $60,000 was still beyond anything Nina could handle. Grandpa Gray had given her some money over the years, but she used most of it to cover living expenses and help out around the house. Dropping $60,000 on a gift was simply impossible. She took a breath, trying to maintain composure. I'm sorry, that's still above what I can afford. Do you have anything maybe under $15,000? At that, Carl's face froze, as if she'd just spat on his shoes. The corners of his mouth twitched, and whatever courtesy remained in him seemed to evaporate. Under $15,000? He repeated, tone clipped. Well, we do keep a few low-end products, but they're hardly suitable as a grand birthday present, don't you think? If it's for your grandfather's 70th, you wouldn't want to embarrass him, would you? Nina's heart squeezed. I don't think sincerity is embarrassing, she said softly, speaking more to reassure herself than to argue with him. I only have so much I can spend. Carl forced a laugh that felt more like a sneer. I see. Well, I guess you know your finances better than I do. The case you need is over here. He led her to a far corner. The lighting was dimmer, and the items were noticeably less impressive. A few jade bracelets that lacked the deep luster of the more expensive stock. Some pendants with flawed coloring. Still, Nina thought they looked beautiful in a humble way. She crouched down to examine a set of beads carved into little lotus shapes, reminiscent of Grandpa Gray's personal taste. While Nina examined the bracelet, Carl gave a slow exhale, tapping his foot. Then, with a curt nod, he turned and sauntered off, not even bothering with a pretense of courtesy. I have other clients to attend to, he said over his shoulder. You can browse these. If you still insist on buying something, just let one of the staff know. His voice dripped with condescension. Anyway, if you can't find anything, maybe you should try a more modest store. Nina pretended not to hear his jab, focusing on the jade beads instead. $15,000 was basically all her savings, but for Grandpa Gray, she'd do it. She ran her fingers over the lotus carving, appreciating the craft. As she stood there deliberating, a sudden, shrill laugh cut across the polished hush of Jade Pavilion's interior. Some people really overestimate themselves, huh? They come in here, talk big about sincerity or whatever, then can't even afford the smallest piece. The voice was female, laced with a sneering quality that made Nina's spine stiffen. She glanced up to see a strikingly beautiful woman with dyed blonde hair pinned into a sleek updo. The name on her bank card was probably something fancy. Nina recognized her, though, from some socialite circles. Iris Lane. Iris wore a fitted designer dress that showed off her figure, and next to her stood another woman, someone Nina had seen on magazine covers more times than she could count. Diana White. Diana was an actress with a pristine public image, rumored to have connections to serious money. Nina had never spoken to her personally, but had brushed past her once or twice at entertainment events. Trailing behind them were three other women, all wearing expensive outfits and sporting carefully styled hair. They were probably minor actresses or wannabe socialites hoping to curry favor with Diana. The group was locked onto Nina with undisguised contempt, like a pack of hyenas smelling vulnerability. Nina took a small step back, hoping maybe they wouldn't bother her if she kept her distance. But she wasn't so lucky. Iris marched over, arms crossed, eyes flicking from Nina's scuffed flats to her unbranded purse. A scornful grin twisted her lips. Well, if it isn't Nina. Odd seeing you in a place like this. Did you take a wrong turn on your way to the thrift store? One of the other women giggled behind her hand. Maybe she's here to beg for freebies? Look at her clothes. Clearly she can't afford the real stuff. Nina's cheeks burned, but she forced herself to keep calm. I'm just looking. My grandfather's birthday is coming up, and I want to give him something meaningful. Iris gave a dramatic shiver. Look at that. How sentimental. Are you sure your grandpa wants a cheap trinket? In this store, cheap is still pricey, you know. Maybe you should head to the discount market across town. You'd be more comfortable there." Diana White hung back, silent, but with a haughty lift to her chin. Nina recognized that stance. Diana was used to being the star in any room, used to half the staff tripping over themselves to please her, which was precisely what began happening. Carl, the manager, reappeared the instant he spotted Diana and Iris. He practically sprinted over, bowing his head like a court servant. "Miss White, Miss Lane, what a pleasure. What can I help you find today? Our best stock is at your disposal. We just got in a new shipment of top-tier jade pieces. I'd love to show them to you." The transformation in Carl's demeanor was almost comical. Moments ago, he'd treated Nina like a nuisance, and now he was radiating unctuous charm. Nina braced herself for the typical dynamic. They'd swarm Diana, bring out the premium jade, and freeze Nina out completely. Indeed, that's exactly what happened. Carl snapped his fingers at two employees. "You, go get the new arrivals from the back. The best ones. Hurry!" Another worker was ordered to fetch a tray of premium tea. Carl turned to Diana with a flourish. "Miss White, please have a seat in our private lounge. Let me personally show you our finest pieces." Diana took one of the new jade bracelets from an employee, held it up to the light, and gave a cool nod. "It's not bad," she murmured, "but maybe a bit plain." "But," Iris laughed, pointing to the elaborate designs. "Plain? You can see your reflection in this thing. It's definitely not for peasants." A woman behind them, probably an aspiring actress, chimed in. "Everything about it says refined. Not like those knockoff jade scraps someone else might be buying." Nina tried to ignore them, focusing on the modest jade beads in her hands. She could sense the employees glancing at her with pity or amusement, as if waiting for her to accept her place as a non-customer and leave. Even so, Nina stayed put. She was determined to buy something for Grandpa Gray right here, because she'd heard Jade Pavilion had top-grade craftsmanship, and she wanted a piece that would last generations. But the sneers only grew louder. Iris stepped away from Diana's side, drifting toward Nina again. "Nina," she said, voice sugar-sweet. "If you have trouble paying, maybe we can take up a little collection for you. I'm sure Miss White could spare some loose change." The group giggled, delighting in their meanness. Nina exhaled. "No need," she said calmly. "I have enough for a simpler bracelet." Carl, overhearing, made a point of rolling his eyes. He strode over, crossing his arms. "If you're planning to buy from that discount selection, you'd better hurry. We're actually about to remove those items from the shelves. We recently decided to discontinue the lower-tier lines." He paused, giving Nina a chance to slink away in embarrassment. "I was going to have them all packed up tomorrow. Maybe you can find a better store for your budget." "Your boss might not appreciate you pushing customers out," Nina replied, a bit sharper than before. She reminded herself that losing her temper wouldn't help. Still, she felt cornered. Carl sniffed. "Our boss? Don't worry. If our boss saw you loitering here, I'm pretty sure he'd be the one telling you to go. We cater to VIP clients, people with class." Iris let out a cackle. "That's right. Jade Pavilion is owned by the King Corporation, you know. The family is practically royalty around here, not a place for certain people." Nina's grip tightened on the jade beads in her hand, but she forced herself to remain polite. She set the beads on the counter, clearing her throat. "Actually, could I see this one a little closer? The carving is of a lotus motif, right?" The question was directed at a young female employee who'd been hovering behind Carl, looking awkward. The employee, name tag reading Ella, stepped closer, glancing nervously at Carl before responding. Yes, it's a lotus carving. Very subtle. The price is only, well, we have it labeled at $15,000, but I think we can still offer a discount if..." Carl whipped his head around, glaring at Ella. "You can do what? Did I say you could give out discounts?" She flinched, but he had already turned his back on her, facing Nina with barely contained hostility. "Let's not waste any more time. You want that piece or not? If you can't afford it, I'd suggest you leave. You're distracting my staff from serving real clients." As if on cue, a wave of employees gathered around Diana White, presenting trays of sparkling jade. Diana flicked her gaze over to Nina, lips twisting with mild disdain. Nina recognized that look. It said, "I'm important, and you're not." Iris and her companions tittered. "Come on, let's leave the wannabe alone. She can rummage through the leftover scraps while we check out the real treasures." Nina's patience wore thin. She placed the bead bracelet on the counter and pulled out her wallet, carefully counting out the correct number of bills along with her card. "I'll take this one for 15,000, she said, ignoring Carl's scoffing laugh. She had just enough in her checking account to cover it, plus whatever little discount might remain. But she sensed Carl would create any excuse to block the sale or humiliate her further. Carl snorted. "Cash and a card? Are you sure the card won't get declined? Let me guess, your limit's probably a couple hundred. Or did you borrow that from someone?" One of Iris's friends giggled. "Maybe it's a stolen card." "Whew, that could be interesting." Nina felt her cheeks go hot, but she was about to retort when something she never expected happened. An older man in a sleek suit strode into the store, flanked by two younger assistants. His neatly combed hair and polished leather shoes spoke of authority, but he wasn't the type to draw attention by flamboyance. He scanned the store with keen eyes, pausing when he saw Nina. Then he looked at Carl, and his expression hardened. Carl, for his part, seemed momentarily confused, as if he recognized the man, but wasn't sure in what capacity. He offered a hesitant smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you here to see Miss White? She's right over—" The older man ignored him and advanced straight to Nina. "Madam?" he said, voice calm and respectful. "I noticed you were about to purchase an item. May I be of assistance?" Ella, the timid employee, blinked in surprise. She half whispered to Carl, "Isn't that Mr. Mason from corporate?" Carl's expression turned alarmed. "It can't be." Then he squinted and realized it was indeed Mr. Mason, an executive in the King Corporation's luxury goods division, someone with direct ties to the owners of Jade Pavilion. Carl's posture stiffened in an instant, all condescension wiped from his face. Nina, meanwhile, had no clue who Mr. Mason was. She only saw a composed older gentleman addressing her far more politely than anyone else had today. Yes, I was going to buy this bracelet, but the manager here told me they don't sell items in my budget." She tried to keep her tone neutral, though frustration simmered beneath her words. Mr. Mason turned to Carl, brow furrowing. "Is that so?" he said, voice laced with a quiet warning. Carl swallowed, quick to shake his head. No, we do sell them, but I was concerned she might not be satisfied with something on the lower end. Our store's reputation is built on excellence, so I tried to suggest a more appropriate piece." A corner of Mr. Mason's mouth twitched, possibly in disgust. "Is that your version of good customer service? Hounding her out of the store? Because from what I saw, it looked more like you were harassing a paying customer." Carl's cheeks reddened. I misunderstood the situation, that's all. I would never turn away a legitimate buyer." Meanwhile, Iris and the other women hovered near the center of the store, not quite sure what to do. Diana White arched an eyebrow, obviously unimpressed by Mr. Mason's intrusion. She spoke up in a crisp voice. "Manager, if you're not too busy, I'd like to see another piece here." Carl spun around, torn between placating Diana and dealing with Mr. Mason's glare. "Oh, of course, Miss White, right away." He snapped at a random employee to attend to her, but the atmosphere had shifted drastically. People stared at Mr. Mason, realizing he outranked any store manager. Mr. Mason fixed Nina with a kind look. "We do have plenty of items that might suit your price range. Let me handle this personally. If you still want that piece, or if you'd like to see something else, I'd be happy to assist you." Nina paused, gaze dropping to the bracelet in her hand. She actually liked it. "If that's okay," she said softly. I don't want to be in the way. I'm sure you have more important clients to attend to." "You're as important a client as anyone else who walks through these doors." Mr. Mason replied, tone resolute. Carl, ring this up for her at once. No more nonsense. Carl gave a jerky nod, stepping behind the register. Nina offered him her card, heart pounding a little. She prayed it would go through. She was confident in her balance, but the way her luck was running, she feared some new humiliation. Sure enough, Carl took forever to run the transaction, typing with unnecessary slowness. But at last, the receipt printed. Nina exhaled in relief, snatching up the bag with the bracelet inside. She'd done it. Grandpa Gray's gift was hers. But before she could turn to leave, another mocking laugh split the air. It was Iris again. Wow, you managed to buy a cheap piece of jade. Congratulations! Now scram, Nina. People with real money need the staff's attention. Nina didn't want to escalate the situation, so she avoided looking at the group of scornful women. She simply murmured, I'm finished here, so I'll be going. She made it halfway to the door when the handle jangled from the outside. In stepped a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet intensity that commanded the entire room's attention the moment he set foot inside. 2 imposing bodyguards flanked him, wearing discreet earpieces. The man wore a tailored charcoal suit, crisp shirt open at the collar, exuding an effortless power that seemed to absorb the air in Jade Pavilion. Nina's heart fluttered. If you liked this story, go ahead and hit that like button. Leave a comment about your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and please subscribe for more tales that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. See you next time.